Remember Matt Schaub? He was the Houston Texans quarterback from 2007 to 2013, and he was pretty legit. He was a Pro Bowler, a fantasy football star, and he helped guide the Texans to their first great years in franchise history. But he had a disastrous year in 2013, and after that was never really heard from much ever again. As an NFL fan for 16 years now, this has always been one of the great mysteries to me. What the hell happened to Matt Schaub? How do you explain his rapid decline into irrelevance? Well, I'm going to attempt to answer that question in this video. This is also going to be a career retrospective because it's important to give context to viewers who may not be familiar with Matt Schaub. After all, he has been out of the spotlight for 7 years now. So with all that laid out, let's get started. Matthew Rutledge Schaub was a third-round draft pick by the Atlanta Falcons in 2004. He would see very little playing time due to the Falcons already having a well-established quarterback in Michael Vick. In fact, Matt Schaub only started 2 games his entire tenure with the Falcons. He wouldn't really get his shot until 2007, when in March of that year he was traded to the Houston Texans for 2 second-round draft picks. This was a move the Falcons would soon regret, when just a few months later Michael Vick's career would go up in flames. But Matt Schaub could care less, because with the Texans finally moving on from failed number 1 pick David Carr, the door was wide open for Schaub to become a full-time starter in the National Football League. Schaub became the Texans' full-time starter in 2007, and he showed a little bit of promise. The Texans finished 8-8, which was their first 500 finish in franchise history. Schaub's numbers on the year were fine, but due to nagging injuries he only started 11 games, so he was still very much unproven. It wouldn't be until the following season when he would really emerge as a productive quarterback. That year he once again started just 11 games, but he posted great numbers to make up for it. He threw for over 3,000 yards, had a completion percentage of 66.1, a rating of 92.7, and a positive touchdown to interception ratio of 15-10. The Texans once again went 8-8, but with all the promise Matt Schaub was showing, there was no reason to be disappointed. 2009 would be Matt Schaub's breakout year in the NFL. He finally started all 16 games, and had by far the best statistical season of his career. He threw for nearly 5,000 yards, had a 67.8 completion percentage, a rating of 98.6, and a touchdown to interception ratio of 29-15. On top of that, the Texans had their first winning season in franchise history. They went 9-7, but unfortunately missed out on the playoffs due to losing tiebreakers with the Ravens and Jets. Matt Schaub was rewarded for his spectacular season by being selected to his first Pro Bowl team. The Houston quarterback was really coming into his own under head coach Gary Kubiak's bootleg offense. Schaub benefited greatly from the play action, and who wouldn't when Arian Foster's in your backfield? And this segues to 2010. Texans running back Arian Foster broke onto the scene in 2010 when he rushed for over 1,600 yards and averaged over 100 yards per game. The guy was a monster, and playing alongside Andre Johnson, one of the best wideouts in the league, it's no wonder Matt Schaub was blossoming into a star. However, 2010 would be a down year for the Texans as a team. They finished just 6-10, and that really put a halt to any talk of them being a serious contender. But statistically speaking, everything was alright. Schaub had another good year, Arian Foster exploded, and Andre Johnson was Andre Johnson. But pressure was starting to mount on the Texans as a whole. Fans were no longer interested in hearing about all the potential the team had. They wanted to see some results. And in 2011 they finally got what they wanted. Because prior to the season it was announced that Peyton Manning would undergo a serious neck procedure that would sideline him for the entire 2011 season. This finally opened up a window for the Texans, who were always stonewalled by the Colts in the AFC South. The Texans took advantage of this opening. They wound up winning the division and clinching their first playoff appearance in franchise history. And they even won a playoff game, defeating the Cincinnati Bengals 31-10, before losing to the Ravens the following week in the divisional round. Matt Schaub had another solid year, but it was cut short due to a foot injury. You might remember it was actually TJ Yates who defeated the Bengals in that 2011 wildcard game. Because they finally reached the postseason, Houston had big expectations heading into 2012, and at first they did not disappoint. I should mention the 2012 season started with Matt Schaub getting a contract extension for 4 years and $62 million, solidifying him as the future of the Houston Texans. But after that, the Texans were off to the races. They had an unbelievable start to the season, winning 11 of their first 12 games. There was the game against Miami where Matt Schaub threw for 5 touchdowns and 527 yards. That 527 is tied with Warren Moon for second most passing yards in a single game. But after the very hot start, the Texans would crawl to the finish line. They lost 3 of their last 4 games and blew a chance to have a first-round bye in the playoffs. In the playoffs, they once again defeated the Bengals in the first round, but they would be humiliated by the Patriots the following week. Matt Schaub had another solid year on paper, but some were pinning the Texans' mini collapse on him, and statistically speaking, that was fair to say. And that takes us to the infamous 2013 season. This is where all hell would break loose for both Matt Schaub and the Texans as a whole. The season started off fine with Schaub leading the Texans to their largest comeback in franchise history, but after that the Texans would completely unravel. Schaub started to struggle mightily. It was unclear what was going on with him, but he clearly wasn't the same player Texans fans had watched the past 6 seasons. During this bad stretch, Schaub was becoming known for throwing pick sixes at critical times. It was so bad that at one point he threw a pick six in 4 consecutive games. He was making history, but not the way he wanted. On top of all that, the Texans fan base began to turn on him. Videos surfaced of Houston fans burning Matt Schaub's jersey, a reminder that the NFL can be a very cruel "what have you done for me lately" business. There was even a notable incident where Andre Johnson and Matt Schaub got into a verbal altercation on the sideline. Bad optics all around. Things got so bad for Schaub that Gary Kubiak yanked him in a Week 6 game. He would start again the following week, but was again benched because of poor play. This time he wouldn't come back until the final 2 weeks of the season. While all of this was going on, the Texans were in the midst of an incredible losing streak. After starting the season 2-0, they finished the season losing their last 14 games. That's right, 14 games to end with a 2-14 record. This was quite literally a season from hell. When you have a season like the Texans had, you should expect some heads to roll, and that's what happened. The first move at season's end was the firing of head coach Gary Kubiak. This was no surprise as his health began to decline, leading to a dramatic scene where he collapsed during halftime of a game. But what was a little more surprising was what happened with Matt Schaub. A new coaching staff was brought in and they did not see Schaub in their future plans despite all the success he had prior to the 2013 season. In March of 2014, Matt Schaub was traded to the Oakland Raiders for a 6th-round draft pick in the 2014 draft. Stunning. Just 2 years back, this move would have been unthinkable, but now he was gone. Like I said earlier, this was a reminder that the NFL, and professional sports in general, can be a very brutal business. My next memory of Matt Schaub in the NFL was in 2015 when he started for the Ravens against the Browns on a Monday night, which is funny because apparently he took a snap against the Browns in 2014 when he was with Oakland, but I have no recollection of it. In that game he threw one pass and it was intercepted, so I guess I wouldn't have much of a reason to retain that. Matt Schaub would then sign with the Falcons in 2016 to be a full-time backup, and that's where he remains to this day. And that's basically the story of Matt Schaub's NFL career. So now that we've summarized his whole career, let's try and answer the million-dollar question. What exactly caused Matt Schaub's astonishing collapse in 2013? Well, I was able to eliminate some common explanations fans might have. The first one is age. Was it his age? The answer to that is most likely no. He was only 32 in 2013, and while that isn't spry, it definitely isn't an age where you're over the hill. Jeff Garcia was able to get a lucrative deal when he was 34. Plus, Schaub is still in the league today and he's closing in on 40, so I definitely do not believe it was age. The next common explanation is that the league figured him out. Well, there's no way that can be true because he was too good for too long for that to be the case. He played stellar football for 6 years before the meltdown in 2013. If he was simply figured out, that would have happened in 2008 or 2009. Plus, he was regularly in the top 10 for passes over 20 yards and passes over 40 yards, so the idea that he was just figured out is ludicrous. A third common explanation is that the Texans changed their offense and Matt Schaub never adjusted. Well, that isn't true because Gary Kubiak was still running the same offense he had always run. So what was it that caused Schaub's collapse? Well, while researching for this video, I came across a great Sports Illustrated article written by Sage Rosenfels, a former teammate of Matt Schaub. And in that article, Rosenfels said his best guess for why Schaub was struggling was that it was mental. And to this day, that is the explanation that makes the most sense to me. When a whole city turns against you so abruptly, even your own teammates in some cases, it can be a lot to handle. It's likely he just wasn't capable of handling that much scrutiny, as is the case with a lot of people. And it's very understandable. When things have been fairly easy for 6 years and then all of a sudden shit hits the fan, you may not be equipped to handle it. So to put it to bed, the best explanation I have for Matt Schaub's unprecedented demise is that it was mental. I mean, what else could it be? Now before I end this video, I would like to draw some comparisons. When I think of quarterbacks having very sudden demises, 2 names come to mind: Jake Delhomme and Joe Flacco. Jake Delhomme had a nightmarish 2009 season and was never the same again. Delhomme was never considered elite, but he was a notch below that and even guided his team to the Super Bowl in 2003. Joe Flacco had a more gradual decline statistically speaking, but after winning the Super Bowl in 2012, the Ravens were very mediocre for many years, aside from 2014. And Flacco just never looked the same as he did prior to that Super Bowl run. So in that sense, he had a very sudden demise. Now to draw a much bigger comparison, I would like to compare the Matt Schaub Texans to an NBA team from the past, and that team is the Atlanta Hawks back in the Joe Johnson days. Those Hawks teams were always pretty good enough to get home court advantage in the first round, but they weren't elite and they could never get past the Cavs, Celtics, or Magic. The Texans had the same problem with the elite teams in the AFC. Matt Schaub is also a comparable player to Joe Johnson because they're both all-star caliber players but not superstar caliber. So there you have it, everything you need to know on Matt Schaub. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel if you aren't already, make sure you follow me on Twitter, and please consider supporting me on Patreon. Until next time, I'm Ramen Robbie, and thanks for watching.